Pawn Stars is one of the most popular television shows to date. You might have a favorite episode, cast member, or have an item you wish you could own. By watching the show, you can get a sense of the strange, rare, and historical things that people bring into the pawn shop, and not just on Pawn Stars, but all over the United States. The first Latin American Nobel Peace Prize, stolen artwork, letters from Aaron Burr, and a ship's bell from 1692 are some of the items that make the list of rare historical artifacts. For more things that you never imagined finding in a pawn shop, keep watching. 1715 Spanish gold coin. Have you ever caught yourself looking at the date of a coin you think is older? You might become excited to find a coin back in the 1950s, and believe this is the oldest coin you've ever seen. The owner of the 1715 Spanish gold coin inherited and brought it to her local pawn shop. Through her research, she found that its price came close to $18,000. The pawn shop employee brought in an expert, who stated the coin is real. The currency came to the Americas as part of a treasure from Cuba. Antique armbands with a special purpose. People kept their money in many forms over the last several centuries. One of the most unique cases featured the Kurdish, who gained and lost so much land in a short period of time, they needed to find a way to keep their money's worth. The Kurdish decided to make armbands out of their money in gold. They carried these armbands around wherever they went, and didn't have to quickly pack up their gold if they needed to leave during the night. Howard Gibbs from Pennsylvania found some gold armbands in a pawn shop in Chicago, Illinois. A wooden humidor owned by John F. Kennedy. Milton Berle and Alfred Dunhill of London wanted to do something special for his inauguration day. They created a unique walnut box that held cigars. It also had a plaque that said to JFK, "Good health, good smoking." Milton Berle. Berle stated the box cost between $800 and $1,000, close to $8,000 today. The worth of the box is way more than $8,000. It ended up in a Las Vegas pawn shop, and someone bought it for $60,000. From there the box went to an auction where someone purchased it for $575,000. Pre-Columbian gold artifacts from a thief. It's not every day someone walks into a pawn shop and sells a 3x4-inch gold sculpture, especially when they only ask for $100. This happened to shop employee March Epstein, who knew the item was particular. However, he had no idea that the person stole the piece from a National Geographic Society museum the day before. The artifact came from a pre-Columbian exhibit that dated around 1400 CE. Eventually Epstein heard about the theft and immediately called the police. Epstein helped the police catch the criminal by telling him to come in to negotiate a second item he had. Isaac Newton's copy of De Natura Fossilium. De Natura Fossilium, first published in 1546, gives you some of the most interesting information about minerals and rocks. Well, you can still purchase a copy of the book. One of the most special prints in the world belonged to Sir Isaac Newton. The world could see a copy of this book as it ended up on the TV show Pawn Stars, where an expert came in and stated it was Newton's copy. The inside of the book held a plate that showed it came from Newton's library, and the book contained a value of $20,000. Several pieces of gold jewelry and precious stones sent to the Museum of London. Construction workers in London during 1912 held a problematic job that didn't pay them enough money to put food on the table. They worked long hours and never received the benefits they felt they deserved. That was until one crew demolished a house near St. Paul's Cathedral. The team found a large box filled with jewelry, stones, gold, and other items. They all stuffed their pockets and brought the items to a local pawn shop. However, instead of giving the construction crew the money they wanted, the pawn shop owner, George Lawrence, contacted the museum as he recognized the items are rare and valuable artifacts. The valuable and rare items from the construction crew are still on display today. After the inspector of excavations for the London Museum, George Lawrence received around 400 rare and valuable items from a construction crew in London. He contacted the museum. Employees of the museum came at once, and together, they realized all the pieces came from the 16th and 17th centuries. The 400 items found in the demolished site can still be found at the Museum of London. They now call the things the Cheapside Hoard and are some of the most unique items people will find in the world. These items include a bejeweled perfume bottle, a Swiss watch, and an emerald-studded salamander. First Latin American Nobel Peace Prize. In 1936, Carlos Saavedra Lamas became the first person to receive the Latin American Nobel Peace Prize. He won the prize for his work in ending the Chaco War by creating a state of peace between Paraguay and Bolivia. Once Lamas passed on, the medal became lost. Years later, an American collector heard that a pawn shop had Lamas Peace Prize for sale. He went to the shop and bought the item for the worth of the price in gold, or $9,000. The prize weighs 222.4 grams and is a 23-carat metal. Many pawn shops see various forms of gold. When someone comes into a pawn shop saying they want to sell a gold item, the first question is whether it's real gold. For many shop employees, they have purchased various gold pieces, other than your typical rings. But for one pawn shop, the amount of gold they received made them nearly faint. The son of a former pawn shop owner brought several pieces of gold shavings into a local pawn shop. When the employee asked how he had so much gold, about 500 grams, he told the employee that his father recently passed and had more gold than he knew what to do with. Vice President of the United States, Aaron Burr, killed Alexander Hamilton in a duel. From 1801 to 1805, Aaron Burr held the position of Vice President of the United States under Thomas Jefferson. While Burr is best known for killing founding father Alexander Hamilton in a duel, he lived a very lonely life after his charge of treason in 1807. During his adult life, Burr spent much time writing letters to many people. Some people knew that Burr made history and took care of the messages he sent. Not only did they frame the notes, but they also made sure to tell the story of the letter to the next generation for safekeeping. A couple of Aaron Burr's letters had a temporary home in a pawn shop. The notes in the pawn shop discussed how he felt about the duel and killing Alexander Hamilton. Burr sent them to his lawyer, whose family continued to pass the letters down from one generation to the next. The last generation of the Abbott family to hold the notes kept them in a dime store frame, but this didn't stop the thieves. While the letters and other items stolen from the house made it to a local pawn shop, the owner only paid $300 for the things. Someone came in and bought the letters before the police could reach them. A pawn shop owner makes up his own stories to explain why he has so many rare items. It happens to nearly every pawn shop. Someone walks in wanting to sell a rare item they found. The story is that they saw the article in an attic or received it from an elderly family member. They are down on their luck and need money for bills. John Shaw once owned his own pawn shop and came across many people with similar stories. In fact, he often told his customer who looked at rare items in his store the same stories, but not because he received them from someone else. He needed to explain how he brought the articles into his pawn shop. John Shaw and his wife quickly realized where they could find rare artifacts to sell. John Shaw owned a pawn shop, but the community knew him better as a teacher. At one time, Shaw taught at a U.S. military base in Panama. Because of his work, he'd spend some of his time looking for artifacts around the world. It didn't take long for Shaw and his wife, Fatima, to find a great location to start digging around the Panama area. During the digging, they found an artifact that helped lead them to a lot more artifacts buried deep into the ground. They decided to keep these artifacts a secret from the authorities. The Shaws started calling himself Indiana Jones. Pawn shops love receiving artifacts because there are a large number of collectors that will purchase these items at a high price. In fact, it's these types of things that help keep the doors to most shops open. Therefore, it didn't take long for Shaw to start selling the artifacts at pawn shops, online and at American flea markets. When people started to question Shaw, he gave them an Indiana Jones-type story, but the FBI didn't buy his story. With a search warrant, authorities found hundreds of ancient artifacts around the Shaw home. Shaw smuggled all of his artifacts. The authorities couldn't believe how many artifacts they found. When they started looking at John Shaw and his wife, other than the couple's Pelican pawn shop, they had dozens of objects in their homes. Not only did they have gold figurines and other pieces, but they also had pottery. Many of the pottery pieces had decorations and used for cooking, such as serving pots. Because Shaw gave all the artifacts from his home and shop back, authorities didn't file charges. However, a piece of Panama history is forever lost due to the selling of many artifacts and removing them without permission. Gas masks showed up during World War I. While many wars came before the First World War, the gas mask made its first appearance during this time. Military personnel needed to find a way to protect soldiers from dangerous fumes during the war, especially from the effects of chloride gas. When German troops first released chemical warfare that included chloride gas, around 1,100 American soldiers died because of the gas. Many more soldiers and civilians became injured due to the gas, which made them feel as if their head burned and needles pierced their lungs. Without the masks, soldiers couldn't continue their fight. One stolen World War I gas mask showed up in a pawn shop. The curators of Wyoming State Museum searched high and low for almost a century for their stolen World War I gas mask, formerly owned and donated by U.S. Army Sergeant Robert O. Penwell. The gas mask disappeared nearly immediately after its placement in the museum's collection. While searching online, officials found the mask for sale by a pawn shop owner in South Dakota. The owner listed the costume for sale on eBay for $300. While his heart sank to the bottom of his stomach, when he found out the mask belonged to the museum, he happily gave it back to them. One customer brought a prehistoric mammoth fossil. People head to the pawn shop with their precious possessions because they need a little extra money. Sometimes it's only meant as a temporary loan, and they want to purchase the item by slowly paying off the loan. Other times they are willing to part with the articles. Usually, people bring in their antiques or jewelry, but not always. One Virginia pawn shop employee thought it was a typical day when a customer walked in, asking for a short-term loan. When the customer placed their collateral on the counter, they gave the employee a woolly mammoth fossilized tooth. The customer never came back for the mammoth tooth. There is a rare possibility that you could still see the mammoth tooth at that Virginia pawn shop. The customer who requested to sell it for a short-term loan never bothered coming back to purchase the tooth. While the only information the employee has about the tooth is that it's thousands of years old, he doesn't plan on selling it. According to the new owner of the tooth, there are some things that you receive in a pawn shop that you don't put back out for sale, and a fossilized mammoth tooth is one. One pawn shop received stolen artwork by a famous illustrator. Beverly Hills is known as a high-end city with a lot of wealthy residents who only want the best. This is often proven everywhere you look, including their pawn shops. Because people want the best and theft is high, authorities regularly check out the items in pawn shops to make sure they are not stolen. 6 oil painting by one of the greatest illustrators of all time, N.C. Wyeth, hung in private art collection of Portland, Maine. In 2013, the unthinkable happened when someone stole these paintings, collectively valued between $1 to $2 million.